Anita, how's your mental health?
Questionable at all times. You know this.
Yeah, how's the mental health of your children?
Also a little bit tricky. Can I tell you my experience in trying to find therapists for myself and my kids, Mel?
Yes, please.
Okay, this is how it goes. You ask around your friends and your family for a referral for somebody who's nearby. You finally find somebody who sounds like they might work for your family. You give them a call and you find out that A, they're not accepting new patients, or B, they have a huge wait list. So you start over again and you ask people if they know anybody who would be a good therapist and a good fit. Finally, you find one, you go and you meet with them and you figure out that you don't actually like them that much. But it's been so much work to find somebody who you can go to in your area that you're kind of stuck with them. Well, do you have any ideas for how to get around this?
I do, because guess what? I've actually had some therapists that I have found on my own, which involves what you're saying. Sometimes I remember one time I was like 3 hours in the bathtub on my phone looking through websites. I was such a prune at the end. But I have also had the experience with working with BetterHelp. And it was like, I don't want to say too good to be true, but because it is true, but it's like amazing because I was matched with my therapist within 24 hours.
And you didn't have to go through all of that other ridiculous process of trying to find somebody. And here's the cool thing too, is if that person didn't work out for you, you can just switch and say, and it's not like you're committing to another years long search for somebody who you're going to jive with.
It's true. And I lucked out, or maybe just BetterHelp is really good at matching people together because I never had to change my therapist. I loved her. Perfect fit for me. And I know that some of our friends have used BetterHelp and they've had to change therapists, and boom, same day, you can change.
Easy peasy.
You can ghost your therapist. Get a new one.
I love this idea. BetterHelp is one of our sponsors. If you use our promo code trybetterhelp.com/WWDN, you get 10% off your first month. And we totally recommend it.
Yes. Get some therapy. That's trybetterhelp.com/WWDN. Oh, hi, Anita.
Well, hi, Mel.
It's been so long.
What up?
I am just relishing in the fact that we both had vacations last weekend and that we both survived.
Yes, it is true. And we both kind of did the same vacation in different places, almost.
Yeah, because even though I invited you on my vacation and you ditched and went on your own, it's okay. I'm just glad you survived.
And then I invited you on my vacation because I forgot that you had invited me on your vacation.
Yes. So I'll tell you about my vacation first because it wasn't as exciting as yours. Yours was
just like relaxing.
Yes. I decided to take my trailer, who I have named Janet, on a special vacation to an RV resort. It was fancy. There was Wi-Fi, there were pools, there's a children's section and an adult section, and there were pickleball, and I brought my dogs. It was great. And I had fun. One of the ways that I've been trying to help my brain like be functional is by learning new things. And so the trailer is a new thing for me, and I've learned how to hook it up and pull it, and it's always an adventure. And it was successful. So that was my vacation. Anita, tell us about yours, because yours was a true adventure.
It was a true adventure. So first of all, I'll just say that when Jason died, I felt like my life was over. And I think a lot of people probably can relate with that. I could not foresee a future that we would take a family vacation. It seemed emotionally and in a lot of practical ways, just unrealistic. So it's been about a year and a half, and I've kind of been itching to try, but also really scared to try because we hadn't tried it. If we try and fail, then it's kind of like that door is really closed, right? So if you don't try, then you don't really know. Does that make sense, what I'm saying there? It's like better to just not even try. But anyway, my sister-in-law invited us down for a barbecue, and it's about a 3-hour drive away. And so I was like, well, if we're going to go, then maybe I can kind of dip my toes in the water and we can try like a little mini outing. And I wanted to do it not with somebody else coming with us to help us, but kind of on my own. So, and you need to know that one of my not skills is that I do not drive well. As soon as I get in the car, I'm like an infant. I like want to fall asleep. I'm not even joking. I didn't even make it out of the county before I was like, oh, I'm tired. But anyway, I made it to where we were going, 3-hour drive. I packed the car for 5 humans, got us down there. We stayed at this place that has train cars that they have converted into like little cabins. And we've been there twice before when Jason was alive. And so it holds some really great memories for us. And so I wanted to go back there because I know how much fun we've had and kind of almost like slay the giant that is the vacation to a certain extent. So, seriously, it's all I talked about with my kids' therapists the weeks before we went because I was so nervous about it. And we talked through a lot of things. We talked about like setting realistic expectations and all that kind of jazz. Well, we got there. We were having a magnificent time for the most part. I mean, it's always going to have its ups and downs, right, with kids. But we were getting ready to go. And my 3-year-old snuck away from the group. And there was a bathhouse nearby. So it was like a house that had, like a little house that had kind of a big room to play games and things in with a table. And then it was surrounded by little bathrooms that you could take showers in. So they had the train areas that have their own bathrooms. And then they had like an RV area. So those bathhouses were for there. Anyway, my sister and her family had happened to be driving the opposite direction for their family vacation. And so they came and camped at that RV place for the night. And so my sister was inside the place, the bathhouse, taking a shower. And she came running out yelling, "There's a fire!" And I was like, that is not funny. So I kind of like walked into the room and I hear her say, "It was your son!" And I was like, what? So I walk in and there is he had set a fire inside of this building. It was a plastic flower centerpiece on a table in the corner. And I am just like, what is my life? You know, like I was feeling so good about our vacation. We had done it. We had succeeded. We had made it through this like really emotional, something that has really been a like kind of a barrier and something I didn't feel I could break through. And it had gone so well. And then he has to go and start the place on fire, you guys.
Oh my gosh.
Yes. So, my sister had run out to get water because there was a shower, but there was nothing to like hold the water, I guess. I don't really know, but I saw a garbage can nearby. And so I just grabbed the garbage can and flipped it over and stuck it on top of the fire to smother it. And then she came back with...
Was it a plastic garbage can?
It was a plastic garbage can.
Did it start itself on fire?
No, it didn't. Because, okay, you know how when these types of things happen, like time slows down? So I like went into the building and I was like checking in all the rooms to see if there was a fire extinguisher, but there wasn't. And I saw the garbage can and I made this like quick little like, okay, the plastic might melt, right? It's not an ideal situation, but I was like, but hopefully it will smother the fire before it melts. And if it does melt, then I'll go to plan B after that. So I had like this whole like, do it. And so I did it and it worked. It did melt the garbage can a little bit, but a melted garbage can is way better than the whole place.
And a melted bathhouse.
Yeah. And then a melted fire or a melted forest because we were in this place that had no cell service, no Wi-Fi, like 45 minutes from the nearest town. So it was, melted garbage can way better. The people were so nice about it, though. Oh, I was so thankful. I didn't even have to pull the poor young widow card for them to be nice to me. They were just like, oh, I'm so glad that nobody was hurt. And you can't imagine this kind of stuff that we have happen here. And thanks for coming and telling us. And I said to the lady who owned the campground, I said, what do you want me to do to make your table okay? And she was like, do you know what we're going to do about that table? And I was like, yeah. And she goes, we're going to put a tablecloth on that table. And I was like, I love you. You are my favorite human in the entire world. It had like melted plastic, like just all over because the flowers were plastic. And so they melted and then the garbage can and whatever.
Maybe it just looked like a cool new piece of art.
Yeah. And then I was like, also, I ruined your garbage can. And also, you need a new centerpiece. So, I don't know. I was thinking I should make a centerpiece and, like, send it to him as a thank you. But
what would you make it out of? Not plastic?
no, it would be super ugly because I don't have any skills. But it was super ugly before, too. So, I don't know.
Well, maybe you did him a favor, actually.
I think maybe so. But here's the good news about it. I was like, okay, we did our first vacation and we almost burned down the fire. I mean, we almost burned down the forest, but we didn't. And so the next vacation can only get better, right?
You would hope.
Yeah, just say yes. Just lie to me, okay?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. So that was our adventure in our first family outing, just as us, without anybody coming to, like, help and assist and things like that. So
That is awesome, Anita. I'm so proud of you guys.
everybody's like, how did it go? And I'm like, well, it's really hard to say because, like, most of it was great, but then at the end, there's this thing that has this giant weight on it. You know, that if you burn down the building, that it doesn't matter how good it was, that is going to be what you remember. So I'm like, I don't know how to weigh this one out exactly.
I would say it was a success.
Yeah.
Either way. I know that our friend Mindy went out with her kids, and she has 4 kids, like Anita, and Mindy that was our guest previously. And she had a win, even though it was, like, super hard for her. So congrats, Mindy and Anita. You guys survived.
And congrats to you in your glamping with nobody catching things on fire and just relaxation.
Thank you.
But I am proud of you for being able to pull a trailer because that would be something I could not do right now.
Well, stay tuned for our upcoming guest.
I'm Anita.
I'm Mel.
We're a couple young widows who like to go camping sometimes and maybe start some stuff on fire and maybe not. And we're just trying to figure out
Widow we do now.
Listen, grieving is hard. Being widowed is hard. And actually, just being a human is hard. Everybody has stuff. BetterHelp.com is making it easier than ever to get the help that you need. BetterHelp gives you secure access to licensed counselors to help you cope with just being on this planet. Just fill out a quick questionnaire, and BetterHelp will match you with a therapist that suits your needs. Our listeners get 10% off their first month by using the link betterhelp.com/WWDN. That's BetterHelp, as in help me. .com/WWDN. Go get yourself some therapy.
Warning, the following interview contains topics that may be sensitive for some listeners.
Mel, do you want to introduce our guest today?
Of course I do. So, once upon a time, I went to high school and I had a teacher who was super awesome.
You went to high school?
It happened, believe it or not. And anyway, I graduated and I was living my life. And then many years later, maybe like 10 years or so later, I get an email from somebody that had the same last name as that teacher. And this person was asking me if I had any recommendations for vocal jazz teachers, because at the time I was teaching jazz piano at a university nearby. And instead of responding to the question, I was like, wait a second, are you related to this teacher that I had? And she said, yes, that's my dad. And then we became Insta friends, like instant friends.
Did you ever answer her question?
Did I? Sarah, did I? Yeah, I did.
Eventually.
So this is my friend Sarah. She has since gotten married and her last name has changed, but her name is Sarah Bertola. She is a singer and a songwriter and a mom. And I always forget that she's a lot younger than me. But our birthdays are like 2 days apart. This is the story of my life, meeting people randomly, and we have lots of interesting connections. So, Sarah, welcome to our podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Hi, Sarah.
Hi, Anita.
Now, Sarah has a story that is not a widow story.
It's true.
And she's definitely allowed to be here. And when my husband died, she came over to my house and she said, you're going to need to sleep. Here's some ZQuil. You take this. And then she's like, I'm going to leave because I know that it's going to get crazy. And lots of people are going to come over and you're not going to be okay. And I'll check on you later. And the reason why she knew that is because of what she is about to tell us. But we'll get to that in a minute. Sarah, give us a brief little introduction to your life, and then we'll talk about after that.
Okay, so I grew up in Massachusetts. I lived there till I was like 15. Well, I guess I started out in Utah, and that's when my dad taught you. But we moved to Massachusetts when I was like 6. And then I moved back to Utah when I was like 15. So I love all things New England. I went to BYU for a year, and that's where I met my husband. His name's Dallas. He's super cool. We are an opposites attract kind of couple where we balance each other out.
Is he an accountant?
He's a chemical engineer.
Okay. Yes, that's opposite of a musician.
Yes.
That is the very opposite. Okay.
He thought about being an accountant. So, I mean, yes, you're on the right track. But he's really great. We're just living our best lives in Bountiful, Utah with our daughter, Rosemary, who's 2.5.
So Sarah just turned 25. I'm 38. I always forget that age gap because you've been through a whole lot, even before you were like 22 or 23, right, Sarah?
I was always an old soul, and I just keep getting older.
Yep. You were
Like,
old when you were born.
Actually, yes. I actually am getting older, and also things are happening to me that make me older. But so like even before I like had any trauma things, I struggled with depression and anxiety. And it was really hard for me because I started having like panic attacks when I was like 11, and I just like didn't know what was going on. So I was just like really scared and didn't tell anyone for literally years. And then when I was like, I don't know, 16 or 17, I was like, something is wrong. I'm going to try to talk to somebody about it.
Yeah, I remember, Sarah, you would check in with me with your anxiety, and I would make you be accountable to me. So I was kind of that jerk friend that was like, nope, you're going to check in, and you're going to tell me this, and go do this thing, and then tell me that you've done it when you're done.
No, it was really good, though, because I feel like in high school and stuff, maybe it's different now, hopefully, because I know that like people are more open about mental and emotional illnesses now, but like in high school, I literally remember junior year, I was like talking with some people, and they were talking about this other girl in our grade, and they were like, she's literally crazy. She has to take medicine because she's so depressed. And I was like, oh my gosh.
You're like,
And,
that's
like,
me.
Well, I didn't take medication yet because I was still in that like, I'm not telling anybody what's happening to me situation. So I was like, wow, that's really wild. And now I'm like, medication makes you so much better. That poor girl, she was probably not even that weird.
Yay, drugs.
But, yeah, so I think Mel was one of the first people that I was able to like speak openly with
Because
about.
I was so old.
You guys became friends when she was in high school still?
Yes, Sarah's band teacher told her to ask somebody who then referred her to me about a recommendation for a voice teacher at University of Utah. So that's how we connected. And so, yeah, and that's pretty common. I work with a lot of high school age people anyway. I do not teach jazz voice. Don't anybody ask me. You will suck. But fun fact, in order for Sarah to be in the jazz band at her high school as a vocalist, she had to play an instrument. And she played the
Valve trombone. Let's go.
valve trombone. It looks like trumpet fingerings, but it's a trombone. So, Anita, you might have a friend. You might need to switch instruments to play.
Did you see my face? I was like, what's a valve trombone? I didn't even know there was different kinds of trombones.
Yeah.
Well, honestly, I didn't know either, but I had started on the baritone horn in like what?
Also,
5th
don't know
grade?
what that is, but
Yeah.
It's like a small tuba kind of.
okay.
Anita knows
then-
zero music things.
That's okay. It doesn't matter.
That's not true. I know middle C. Leave me alone.
It's all good. Yeah, so I had talked to the band teacher, and I was like, I want to sing. And he's like, what can you play for me? And I was like, all I know how to play is baritone horn. And he was like, perfect. I have a valve trombone you can use. And so I practiced like all summer. And I got okay.
Good job.
Cool.
But it was good enough because there aren't like a ton of trombone players.
So, Sarah graduated high school. She went to college. She met her husband. She got married. And I was like, yes, maybe all this anxiety that Sarah has had is now going to be a little bit different. She has somebody to help her. Like, she's in a good place. She has a great environment. And Sarah, take it from here.
Yes, I felt the same way. I was like, finally, because like moving as a teenager, it's tough, right? And dealing with mental illness and emotional stuff that you like don't know how to navigate, that's tough, right? So, oh, and also I had like this very bizarre issue with my knee, which resulted in like multiple surgeries.
See, that's
So I had
my language now.
Anita wants to know everything about
that.
it. Tell her all the clinical terms because she actually knows it.
okay. So I had osteochondritis dissecans, so I had a blood clot in my bone. And so I was writing on the board in seminary in my high school class one day, and I shifted my weight, and I fell over, and I called my mom, and I said, I think I broke my leg. And she was like, go back to class. And literally it took like 2 years for the doctors to figure out what had happened, because with stuff like that, like your bone can go back into its place like a little puzzle piece, and sometimes you can't see it on two-dimensional images. So they couldn't see it on x-rays. And so for years I'm like, my knee hurts, and they're like, no, it doesn't. And then finally I was able to figure out what was going on, and I had microfracture surgery to try to get it to grow back. And the doctor after that operation was like, yeah, I don't think that's going to work, because it's actually like a very large piece of bone in there. So then I had to defer a semester of college and get on a wait list for like donor bone from a cadaver. And then finally I was able to fly to California, because they don't do bone grafts of that size anywhere else in the country, to have my leg operated on. And then I had like months of physical therapy, and you like cannot put weight on a bone graft for like 3 months. So it was really intense. So I'm like, and of course depression like thrives when all you can do is lay in your bed
And eat licorice.
Yes. And you're like
Yes.
forbidden to do anything outside. I mean, you can go outside, but it's just like this whole thing if you like want to get out there. So anyway, yes, finally I'm happy, and I'm married, and I'm thriving, and I'm like, this is going to be so awesome.
And how old were you at this point?
20. So I got married like 3 weeks after I turned 20, because I was like, I'm not getting married as a teenager. No, I'm not going to do that.
Who would do that?
No, I mean, like
Only
everyone.
Anita.
So many people do that. And also it's like, okay, well, it's really not that different to get married 3 weeks later, but whatever.
I was 20 also. The first time.
Yeah, so I was like, well, this is going to be great. And so it was actually kind of weird, because we were only married for a few months, and we were both not that far into our schooling when we both felt really strongly like we need to have a baby, which was like very, I don't know, it was like scary for us, because we're like, this doesn't actually make a lot of sense, like on paper. And for me, I've been very like emotionally driven in my life. So I'm just like, well, this is what we feel like we need to do. Let's go for it. But Dallas, the accountant personality, is like, wait. Let's make some spreadsheets. Let's like figure this out. But it was actually really awesome, because he kind of like, he did his thing, but I wanted him to be sure as well. I didn't want to be like, I'm forcing you. So he was like, yeah, I'm totally on board. Let's do it. So we had a baby girl, and we named her Alice. And she was like the greatest baby ever. And then when she was like 5 months old, one morning I went to get her out of her room, and I found that she had passed away unexpectedly in the nighttime. And it was just like all so sudden. And it's always weird, because I don't know how to tell that story without like people being like, wait, what happened?
I know. I wanted to say that too, and I knew the story. So, okay.
But that's how I felt too. I was like, I literally said to my mom the day Alice died, I was like, I feel so many feelings. Like, I feel obviously like devastated and sad, but I also feel just like so shocked, like so confused. Like, what? So it was all very weird. And we had no clue like what had happened for a really long time. So it's like adds to the confusion. But yeah, it was, I don't know. I also never know how to talk about it, because it's like anything I'm going to say is in an understate. Yeah, I don't know. So then I'm just like, yeah, it was bad. And then people are like, wait.
Okay, so let's back up a little bit. So you had a totally, completely healthy baby, as far as you knew.
Yes.
You put her to bed.
Yes.
You woke up in the morning doing your regular things, like going to check on her or get her out of bed or whatever, and you notice that she's not breathing.
Yeah, and honestly, like when I found her, it wasn't even like, oh, she's not okay. It was like, oh, she's like dead. Like it was very, I mean, like they have a really hard time determining like time of death with infants just because everything happens so quickly. So they don't really know exactly when she had passed away, but it was pretty clear to me that like it had been a little while. So it was like it wasn't like she was blue or anything. Like
It
she
wasn't like,
passed
let's do
that.
CPR, maybe we can get her back. You're like, it's been a while.
Yeah, I did do CPR just because like I don't know. I can't imagine a situation where you wouldn't even try. But I was not optimistic that it would help. But it was a huge blessing because the first responder to the scene, obviously I called my husband to call 911 right away. And the first guy that came was like an obscure relative of my sister-in-law. And I don't know, there was something very comforting about that. Like, oh, this is like I don't know. I didn't know him, so I didn't recognize him. But even knowing later, it's like, oh, that's nice that he was like familiar.
It's always so interesting to talk to people that haven't been through traumatic deaths like this because they could be listening to our conversation being like, are they being really trite about their traumatic situation? And really it's like part of you has to detach or something or use humor or something like that just to cope. Do you feel like that in this case?
Sometimes we assume that unless we had a huge life insurance payout, we don't really need to know anything about investments or even finances. But guess what? A little knowledge of finances is critical for all of us. Maybe your partner was in charge of that stuff, and now you find yourself making all the decisions. Maybe you're mad about that. Maybe I am. Nicole from the He's Gone But the Money's Not podcast is here to help. She tackles financial literacy by telling the stories of women and widows and finance experts and shares the lessons they've learned as certified financial planners. Whether you know a lot and feel confident in your financial decisions or feel unsure about all of that stuff, there is more to learn. Listen and subscribe to the He's Gone But the Money's Not podcast on all podcast platforms. This ad was paid for by Rockhouse Financial, an SEC registered investment advisor.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like, I think it's kind of like what I said before, where it's like, no matter how I say it, people are going to be like, but you're not really saying it like as sad as it is. And it's like, yeah, I can't really like unlock all of that for you. So I'm just going to like stay here. I don't want to like get deeper.
Right. You
I
can't
don't
go
know.
lower.
And sometimes that's like a choice where it's like, no, I just want to stay here. But then other times it's like, I don't know, you just like can't for some reason. Like, I don't know, but definitely I get that a lot. Something I didn't mention earlier, my older sister, Natalie, her first baby as well, who was a girl named Margot, she passed away at 1 week old from a chromosomal defect called trisomy 18. And so I was familiar with infant death, and I had been to my niece's funeral and seen my sister speak, and that was like traumatizing for me, even as the aunt. And honestly, though, I feel very grateful that I got to lose my daughter second. Like if we both had to at some point anyway, I'm glad that I went second, just because like it wasn't as unfamiliar, I guess, where it was like, okay, I don't know, I had someone close to me who I could look to as an example in that situation. And we all the time will have conversations where like even our other sisters will be like, you guys are being weird. Like they don't know how to handle it because of course it was traumatic for them as well, but it's just a little bit different when you're the mom, you know. So I get that all the time. But I think for sure like humor, I don't know, the dark humor is like it's the only way to process it at times.
Yeah. And how long ago did this happen, Sarah?
So Alice was born August 11th, 2016. So like, I don't even know. So she passed away January 2017. So like 3.5 years.
Okay.
But honestly, like I'm listening to this and it's making me feel a lot of feelings. So I'm kind of like, usually I'm kind of chatty and talkative, and right now I'm just kind of feeling like a lot of weight, which is not, I would say typical for me, but that's how I'm feeling right now. I'm feeling a lot of like, oh, yeah, just a lot of weight and a lot of feelings. So I'm still here. I'm just like,
I didn't know if you were mad at me because I muted you.
well, yeah, I mean, I was a little bit mad too.
She's holding a grudge.
I'm holding a grudge for a lot of things, but
Is
yeah,
it
this is
because it's a child death, and so it's
probably, and to be honest, I felt like that was my greatest fear in life, was having something happen to my one of my kids, and especially like a SIDS type of a thing, where you have no control and you have no, you know what I'm saying, no warning, no. So I felt like that was like my biggest fear in my life. And right after Jason died, actually, I said to my sister, I'm so glad it wasn't one of my kids, which also sounds really weird, and like horrible, but I have my reasons for saying that. I don't know if I stand by them now, but that's how I felt right in the aftermath, was just like, oh gosh, I'm just glad that it wasn't my worst fear. But I'm not sure that was a good worst fear to have.
I think it's pretty much a universal worst fear, though. So
Yeah,
you
maybe.
know, it's different.
And I also think that, like, we would kind of, even though, like, we would never, like, pick what happened to us. Like, you would never be like, yeah, I'll lose my husband, sure, right?
Yeah.
But, like, I think we would all kind of gravitate more to what's familiar, because, like, once Alice died, Dallas and I were like, I'm so glad it wasn't you, you know?
Yeah.
So it's not like, oh yeah, this is better. It's just like the grief and the trauma you've experienced is familiar to you, and
Yeah.
all the other stuff, there's like so many unknowns because you haven't lived that, right? So I don't think it's bad at all that you said that. It doesn't mean you're like, oh yeah.
I think these are good conversations to have too, because like anybody that deals with loss takes their own loss as like the worst thing in the world, but at the same time is looking for ways that it could be worse, depending on like how they're feeling that day. You know, sometimes they're not. They're like, this is the worst. My thing is the worst.
Yeah.
I mean, I hate that we are in these conversations because of our circumstance and because this happens, but I do really like to hear the similarities and the differences when people are losing loved ones, because, you know, Anita and I do that all the time. Like the would you have rather had your husband die slowly or quickly? Or like, we've never gone to like, would you rather have lost a kid? We just don't go there.
Because that's kind
like,
of dark.
It's
And
super
which
dark.
one would
And I
you
don't even
choose?
have one.
Yeah.
So, but,
And which one?
and Sarah,
Oh my gosh.
so Sarah, like you had your whole life basically was like a big ball of anxiety, and you are obviously like in your soul older than your physical years. And so this happened to you. How old were you? 22? 21?
I was 21.
You were 21 when you had your first baby and she had died unexpectedly. Yes. When you were in school and you were pregnant with Alice, wasn't that the best time you'd ever done in school? Like, tell us about that journey emotionally. Like, keep going.
So I'll rewind just a little bit just to like frame it with context. But when I first went to school, I had like another wave of depression and anxiety. And I would say that before I went to college, mostly I was experiencing anxiety. And then once I went to college, kind of the depression kicked in, which is totally normal. I think it's typical for a lot of people. I don't know if it's because of like life changes or just that age, but a lot of people start experiencing more emotional challenges at that time of their life. And that was definitely true for me. I really, really struggled in school. So I only went to BYU for a year because the 2 semesters I was there, I really struggled with my coursework. Mostly just because I like could not go to class or like do anything. I was like very, I don't know, I was very like low functioning. And this was the time where I'd like send Mel videos where I'm like, I've been in bed for 3 days. She'd be like, take a walk. And I'd be like, fine. So I'd like send her a video of me like walking on like 2 blocks around my apartment, and I'd be like, I did it.
I
Now
know.
leave me alone.
I was so proud of you. I'm like, I'm not going to respond to you until you send me proof of you walking. And I remember one where you were like, I haven't showered in 3 days. I'm like, get in the shower now and don't text me till you're done. Or I was like, text me from the shower, and you had rigged up your own waterproof phone case.
Put it in a Ziploc bag.
Ziploc bag. That was good.
Yeah.
Very innovative.
So Sarah, I feel like in a small way we were working together to get you through each week.
Absolutely, we were. Well, and the shower thing was just because I had really bad anxiety still, and I mean, people always talk about like shower thoughts, but like shower thoughts for me were like anxiety spirals every time. So I'd be like, I can't take a shower, I'll have a panic attack. And luckily that's like not an issue for me anymore. My husband is very grateful that I can now shower without freaking out.
Well, that's why Mel made you get in the shower, because she was like, Sarah, if you could see your hair, you got to get in the shower.
I can smell you
gross.
Through the phone.
Dry shampoo, baby, let's go.
Dry shampoo can only go so far. I have a 13-year-old daughter. You cannot substitute dry shampoo.
Well, and to be fair, I did like sponge bath situations on myself sometimes, and like, you know, you gotta like do what you can, but it was rough. So I really struggled with school for a long time, and I was doing music at that point, and then I was like, well, I'm not gonna be able to get into any programs because my GPA is like 1. And so my husband was like, well, why don't we look at like transferring or something and figure out something so that you can be a productive human. So I was like, okay. So I transferred to UVU, and I was like, I'm going to do the nursing program, which like I never could have gotten into at BYU because it's extremely competitive. So while I was pregnant, I was doing prerequisites for the nursing program at UVU, and I took every single one except physiology, and I did great. I got like a 4.0 those semesters. And I did all of them. And I was about to take physiology and a bunch of just like general credits, January 2017. And I had filled out all the paperwork for Alice to go to the UVU like childcare thing there. And I was like, yeah, I'm living my best life. I'm finally thriving. And she passed away like right before the semester started. And I had been planning to be like a labor and delivery nurse or a neonatal nurse. And that kind of like went out the window after Alice passed away, because I was like, I can't deal with that. Like, I have too much trauma surrounding this now. And like with my sister losing her daughter, that had kind of inspired me, right? But it was like removed enough that I wasn't like, no, I will literally like have like trauma responses at work. And after losing Alice, I was like, okay, I have to like kind of start over and figure out what I'm going to do all over again. So I did, I started sharing my story online, and I got to connect with a lot of people through a blog and through Instagram and that kind of thing. And so I thought, okay, well, I'll study like business and like marketing, digital marketing kind of thing, and keep doing this. And so I did that for a little while, and I did really like it, but I just was still struggling, and I was doing okay in school, but not like great. And then I don't know, it was like a year later, and I had finished my generals. So luckily I still had those to complete when I was trying to figure out what to do. And then I went back and did music for 2 semesters, which I loved, but I was like, okay, if I'm going to do music, I'm going to have to start at like theory 1. And I was like, that's going to put me back like 3 more years. And at this point I have a 1.5-year-old, and I'm like, I don't want to do school for 3 more years. So it was literally like, I don't know, 6 months ago that I was like, I'm just going to graduate and I'm just going to be done with it. So I'm going to graduate hopefully at the end of fall semester, just with a degree in university studies. Let's do it. But honestly, that's been like a huge victory for me, because there have been a lot of times where I've just been like, who cares? A degree doesn't matter, which is like 100% true. I believe that still. But it became more of like a personal victory for me, where it's like, I want to conquer this. This has been so hard for me for so long, and I just want to prove to myself that I can do it. And so I've been doing it. I will have finished 22 credits this summer.
That's crazy. Good job.
What am I thinking?
Sarah,
Yes.
child loss is so horrible.
Agree.
And nobody knows what to do to help somebody that has experienced child loss. Would you give us some recommendations or experiences of stuff that helped you or did not help you? And I know that everybody's experiences are different, but what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I want to say that to me, like, grief is grief, right? And like, it's obviously like a different flavor or whatever. But like, Mel, when you lost your husband, I wasn't like, I can fix this, but I was like, I know trauma and I know grieving, and I knew that I didn't know what it was to lose a husband, but I was like, so I think you first of all should just remember that, like, if you have experienced loss or trauma of some kind, you don't need to like discredit that and be like, oh, but it's different. Like, I don't know, I feel like pain is pain and you can connect with other people about that. And it's not saying that it's exactly the same, but you can share your experience with other people and you can help in great ways. For me, I feel like losing my niece before losing my daughter kind of allowed me to view other people's efforts differently, because I remember trying to help my sister and I remember feeling so like awkward and being like, I don't know what to say, I don't know what to do, but I was like really trying, right? And I feel like that really allowed me, once I lost Alice, to be like so appreciative of other people's efforts, even if they were like extremely weird or like misguided. I was just like, they're trying. Like, I've been them. I've been the person trying to help, and just like, so, because I remember one specific time, I don't remember exactly what I said, but I remember I said something to Natalie and the whole room was like, ugh, that was weird, right? And I was like trying to be helpful, and I just like, I don't know, I kind of kept that with me and thought like, okay, I'm just gonna like really focus on people's intentions, and like if they say something off color or if they like do something that's weird, I can still like appreciate that. And I feel like I've seen that with a lot of people who have experienced loss. Like, they don't really care so much like what you do. Like, just do something and show like, I want to help you. And like, I don't know, my sister Natalie and I have talked about this a lot, how like there aren't a lot of like gifts out there that are like really like wonderful for like a grieving person. So like when you lose somebody, you get a lot of very like unusual little trinkets, right? Where it's like, I don't need this cherub statue. I don't know. Like,
I didn't get a cherub statue, but I'm kind of jealous now.
you know what I mean though, where it's like, oh, this painting of my daughter with Jesus done by this random stranger who is not actually an artist is very weird. I'm not going to hang this in my house. Right?
Right.
But at the same time, you're like, I really love that you like did this. Thank you.
Yeah.
And so I just think like doing something, that's great. I don't know.
I got a sack.
I wasn't picky.
I got a sack, and inside the sack was
You got a sack?
like a grocery bag. Somebody dropped off a grocery bag, and inside of it was saran wrap, Febreze, and boxes of matches.
What?
It's stuff you might need.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, it's the same thing. Like, they were just like, what do you do? And so they went and got stuff and brought it over, even though. So, like, thank you for bringing me those things. That was very thoughtful.
Yeah,
And,
I mean, they tried.
They did. This was a weird.
I don't know.
Weird assortment.
Oh my gosh.
I think also as like a giver, you need to just remember that people are grieving and everyone like processes grieving in different ways. Like, I could see somebody being like, what is this? I don't need this. And just being like totally rude. And it's like, you can't control that, right? I don't know. I guess that could happen. Chances are low. But like, when people are grieving and they're experiencing a trauma, like, just like, let it happen. It's fine. Just let them do what they need to do.
I totally agree with you. And this is when I think about giving something to somebody else. is that your job is to give the offering, and that's your part, right? It's not to expect any sort of return for that offering. So even if they get angry, you can still feel like, I gave my offering, whatever it was, and that's where it ends, right? You can't expect them to say like, oh, thank you, or you know what I'm saying? Like, that's how I had to say that too, because we got so much bread. I mean, like, massive amounts of bread, and I had to throw so much of it away, and I felt guilty. And at some point in time I was like, I don't need to feel guilty about that. They gave their offering. I accept their offering. It doesn't matter what I do with the bread. The bread is actually not the point, right?
Yeah.
The painting is not the point. The
Right.
point is trying to say, you know, I'm here for you.
Yeah. I thought about you. I wanted to do something for you. We got like so much chili. People would not stop bringing us chili. It was like freezing cold. It was January, right? So it's like, and people are thinking, okay, well, the whole Bynum family is at that house, sad. How can I make like a tremendous amount of food for all of them? And so and it's cold, so they just made chili. And like, by like day 6 of chili, we're like, can't eat any more chili.
Everybody smells a little funny.
Yeah, and it's like, it's tough times. But honestly, like, I don't think there was a single thing that I got that I was like offended by, or like, I don't know. I just think no matter what it is, you're just like, thank you for thinking of me and thank you for trying.
So Sarah, you've had a child since you've had Alice. What were your feelings when you were pregnant with a second child?
So when I was talking about getting pregnant with Alice, I was kind of the one like leading the charge, I guess, with that. And then with our second child, Dallas felt much more ready and much more eager to have another child. And I just kind of felt like I was really, really scared by that idea. I was not ready to like open my heart to that kind of loss again, because I was like, I was ready for a hard kid, right? I thought, okay, if our kid is special needs, I can do that. I was like, if we have triplets, I can handle that. If our kid is a huge jerk, I can do that, right? But like, it had never even like crossed my mind that we could like lose a child. So I was like, I was ready for like all those other possibilities, but I wasn't ready to like grieve. And I think I had even kind of thought like, oh no, I'm safe. Like statistically, I can't lose a kid. My sister already lost a kid. Like, so like, that's not going to happen to me. But then like, obviously it did. And it just kind of made me realize like, I could lose another kid. Like that could happen to anybody, right? And I was really freaked out. But at the same time, I really trusted Dallas. And also, honestly, I kind of felt like, I don't know if this happened to you guys, but I just sort of slipped into this like apathy sort of situation where I was just like, anything could happen, right? Like I could die. It's like, I don't know. And it kind of made me less anxious in a way where it was just like, I'm realizing that I am powerless and I actually can't control anything. So who cares? So I was like, let's just do it. Let's just go for it. I can't stop anything. So, I don't know. That's not a very like hopeful way. I wish I could be like, and I just felt so much peace. Like it was going to be great, but I didn't.
Yeah, but like who does? I mean,
yeah, I don't know.
Maybe you have problems. No, I'm just kidding. Well, but when you were, yeah, and were you worried about if you could connect with the new child?
Oh yeah, totally. So Dallas was very excited to try again, and I felt kind of the same thing where it's like I didn't want him to agree before he was ready with our first child, and I didn't want to agree before I was ready, but I also kind of felt like I would never be ready. I was like, there's never going to be a day where I'm like, I'm ready to be hurt again. Like, I don't know. And also my sister Natalie, the day Alice died, was like, I know this is the last thing you want to do, but like, you're not going to feel even close to okay until you have another baby. And like, if that had come from someone else, I would have been like, get out of here. But like the fact that it came from my sister, who I was so close with, who had lost a child, and I had like seen that prove true in her, where like before she had another baby, she was like a zombie. I was like, yeah, that seems true. I don't know. And like context is everything, because literally if someone else had said that, I would have been like, I don't know. I don't know what I would have said. I probably would have freaked out.
I was going to ask you about that. I was going to ask if people insinuated or told you that you were so young and you could have another baby and things like that. If anybody ever, oh, there's a fly, said that, and what was your response to that? But it sounds like just your sister. Did anybody else say that to you?
Not that I remember. I mean, I remember people sharing with me that their oldest sibling had passed away before they had been born, and kind of shared like their connection to them. And I felt like that was really special. No, I don't remember anybody being like, you just need to have another one. But I do remember once we announced that we were going to have another baby, people were like so psyched. They were like, yeah, this is what we wanted for you. And so it became kind of clear, like, oh, they wanted to say it, but they didn't. So it's like, good for them, where they like kept it in. But I was terrified. And so I agreed. This is TMI, but I love to share it because I feel like it's part of it. I don't know. To me, you decide if it's weird, but
We talk about death every week.
I know.
You should say anything you want.
So we decided that we were going to try to get pregnant, and we tracked my cycle, and we were like, okay, I'm ovulating this day. Let's try 3 days before, and then the day I'm ovulating. So we tried 3 days before, and then the day I was ovulating, I came to Dallas, and I was like, I'm not ready. Like, I'm way too freaked out. I can't do this. And then, like, he was like, that's totally fine. We'll wait. And then it was like 4 or 5 days later, I was like, I'm pregnant. I can tell. And he was like, what? And I was like, I'll take the test in like 3 days, but I guarantee it's going to be positive. And I took it. So I woke up at like 5 or 6 in the morning because I had to pee. And I took the test, and it looked negative. And I was like, oh. I was surprised that I like was a little bit disappointed. And so I just like set it on my dresser and then went back to sleep. And then Dallas got out of bed first around like 9 o'clock. And he like picked up the test to like throw it away. And he's like, I'm pretty sure this is positive. And I was like, no, like it doesn't count. Like you're not supposed to look at it later. Like it's not. Anyway, so I look at it and was like, no, this is positive. So it just kind of like all worked out like just a really good way, because I think if it had been positive the first time I looked at it, I would have been like very stressed out. But the fact that it appeared to be negative, I had the opportunity to like feel a little bit disappointed. I don't know. It's like kind of hard to explain, but I still had a really hard time the whole pregnancy. With Alice, I felt so connected to her from before she was even like conceived. I just like knew exactly how she was going to be. And I just felt like, I don't know, I felt very, very connected to her. And when she was born, she felt very familiar to me. And there was just like really strong connection. And with Rosie, I just felt like she felt very unfamiliar, and I was like not sure what it was going to be like. And when she was born, I really struggled for the first few months to connect with her. And I tried to be very open about that, even though it was like something I felt a little embarrassed about, because I was like, here's this like beautiful, perfect little baby girl, and I'm like struggling to connect with her. But I wanted to like normalize that, because I think like a lot of moms expect this like beautiful, instantaneous sort of like eruption of love and connection when their child is born. But I think that's not how it always happens. And I think it's very normal to like have to like work towards that and like build that relationship, because like that's how it is in real life, right? Like, but yeah, I feel like some people do have this like grand instant connection, even like in romantic situations, right? Some people are like, oh, it was love at first sight, and like that's great. But then like other couples, they meet and it was just like, well, whatever at first. And then over time, like your connection improves and you like fall madly in love. And it doesn't mean like that love is any less.
I mean, a lot of times when there is death and loss and a trauma, like within a marriage, people can split up or they grieve differently. How have you guys stuck together or worked through Alice's death during all of this? Because this is hard stuff. Oh my gosh. And you were only 21 when it happened.
I know.
You're dealing with stuff that I remember you and I would text, and it was you're just like, I, most people won't deal with all of these things, and I'm only 21, and it's so
Yeah.
true. Like, tell us about that.
We were familiar with the fact that a lot of people's marriages don't survive the loss of a child. And so, like, the day Alice died, we both were very concerned about our relationship. And we wanted to make sure that we were doing everything we could to stay together, and not just stay together, but like actually have a good relationship and a good time together. Not just be like, well, we're just not getting divorced, even if we're like having a terrible time. So we went to therapy like right away. And we spoke with the therapist about like our concerns, and we told her like we're really worried. We know a lot of people don't stay together after they lose a child, and we want to make sure that doesn't happen. And I feel like what she said was like really big for us, because she started by saying like, well, there are like 3 reasons people like split up after losing a child, and the first one is they blame each other, right? So it's like, well, if the mom was at work and the kid passed away while the dad was watching him, she might blame him. And so like that's one reason. And luckily that was something that we didn't feel. We didn't blame one another for losing Alice. So that was great that we got to at least skip that part. The other one is that they grieve differently, and it's hard for people to grieve differently because it can feel like, oh, you don't care because you're not doing the things that I'm doing, right? And that proved to be a big thing with Dallas and I. I mean, like, we're really different already, and we definitely grieve differently. Like, Dallas went into the junior core of the chemical engineering program at BYU like 4 days after Alice's funeral. And I was like, how is he going to do that? And like, obviously that was not going to work for me, but he needed that, you know, he needed something that he could engage in and like work on and focus his energy on and distract himself from. And I think that talking with the therapist before that really prepared me for him to react differently than I would have. And I don't know, I didn't really have a problem with it. I was like, okay, that's what you need to do, like, go for it. But I could totally see myself being like, how could you just go to school right now? Like, do you remember what happened like last week? Hello. But I think it was really wise for her to say, like, just allow each other to grieve how you need to, because I was the total opposite. I was like, I cannot do anything. I'm just gonna like lay on the floor and cry and just like do nothing until I feel a little bit better, that I can start doing more. So that was really big, and that still comes up at times. But I think it was really great that we kind of got that advice while like the shock was still there, and like the true grieving hadn't had time to like settle in yet. So we were like prepared, if that makes sense, because we had no defense. It wasn't like, oh, well, people grieve differently. And I wasn't like, but he doesn't even care. It was like, okay, well, we'll just kind of see how that plays out, because it was still so fresh. And I always tell people, like, the number one thing you can do is go to therapy, because like, I can't personalize my advice for every single person, but like your grief and your trauma and your experience is so unique. It's like as unique as whoever you lost, right? And so like there is no like one size fits all grieving recovery plan. There just isn't. And so that's why I'm like, find a therapist that's right for you. And then that's what they're there for, is creating that like customized like coping strategy to help you, because I just think everyone's special and unique.
That's so lame.
It's so lame.
Why?
Yeah, you should be able to like tell them 4 steps, Sarah, and be like, do A, B, C, and D.
I know.
And you're fixed.
I know.
Charge him $500 and
I know.
Bob's your uncle.
Well, and I always feel that way when people are like, what should you do? And like, obviously Mel even said like, and it's different for everybody, but when people are like, what can I do for someone grieving? And I'm like, I mean, I can tell you some things that were good for me, but like everyone's different. So I don't know.
Some people may not want to talk to anybody. Some people may hate chili, or they only like vegetarian chili. Hey, they may be vegan.
They might.
Hey, Sarah, do you feel like your anxiety and like the hard time you had all up until you were 20 or 21 helped you deal with this massive thing of child loss?
Yeah, I do.
Tell us
I
how.
do. Well, I feel like,
that pause was too long to believe you.
why? I wanted to answer honestly.
Just
Yeah, no one's ever asked me that.
I'm just teasing you. I feel like you were coming up
She
with a
doesn't
lie
know you
in
yet.
that pause.
Okay,
So
Anita's really sarcastic, just so you know.
I'm kind of a jerk.
Times 3.
I really do feel like it has like helped me though, because I really feel like, I don't know, I was used to things being hard, if that makes sense. And honestly, I've been talking with my therapist recently where I was like, I've been having like the time of my life during COVID. Like, I feel bad because I know a lot of people are like really struggling, but like I'm actually kind of like thriving, and that's weird. And she was like, here's the problem with you, Sarah. You have not had 5 minutes of normalcy in your life. So normalcy is like terrifying to you. So this whole like the world is stressed pandemic is like your sweet spot. Like this is where your whole life has been. Yeah, like this is how my whole life has been. Like I have not had normal time in my life since I was like 10. And so when things are normal, I start to freak out like, oh no, this is so weird. I don't know how to deal with this. And she was like, we're going to help you know how to navigate like real life, just like day to day monotony of like real life. So like for me, it definitely did prepare me for like the trauma, and I feel like it helped me like navigate that better. But I feel like now I'm kind of dealing with the fallout of like all of that, where it's like, okay, but how do I just do like regular life? And I don't really know because I haven't.
Who knows what that even is?
Had that. No, I don't know. And honestly, like when we talk about this too, where she's like, I'm not saying like from here on out, nothing bad is ever going to happen. But she's like, but there are like, there's a season for everything, right? And I feel like your life has seasons where it's like, I don't know, kind of more normal. And for whatever reason, when I'm like in those times, I am like, I don't handle it well. So I'm learning. So I do feel like it really helped me handle like big trauma, because I was like, okay, I can do this. I can do hard things. I've done hard things. My life has just been a big hard thing, right? But but yeah, I'm trying to figure out.
Hashtag anxiety for the win. Who would have thought?
Hashtag anxiety trained. I've been training for this. My brain has been presenting me with worst case scenarios.
You're just in the anxiety Olympics now.
I know. So I was at a conference for bloggers and like building an audience and working on social media, and I had been doing that, sharing my story of losing my daughter and coping with grief. And one of the keynote speakers was talking about building businesses, and she had pulled this one woman up on stage, and she had asked her about her business and her life and that kind of thing, and was kind of just coaching her on how to like do it better. And she was like trying to give this lady a pep talk, and she was like, I mean, you can do anything. You've had 5 kids and you've kept them all alive, so you can do this. And it was like, it was very strange. It's never happened to me before or since, but I literally just like burst into tears. I was like so instantly upset by this, because I was like, I didn't keep my daughter alive. What the heck? and I just like went into the bathroom and just cried. And like, it was not this lady's fault. I feel like that's not an unusual thing to say, but I do try to like let people know, like, probably don't say that, because that's not actually like the bare minimum of what you can do. Like, just like love your child, you know, where it's like the goal for today, keep my kid alive. And it's like, okay, well, you don't always have control over that. Of course we're doing our best, but it's like the goal for today, love my kid. That's all.
Yes. So I'm going to insert myself into the story because I remember this story. So I remember, Sarah, right after that had happened, you ran to the bathroom, I think, right, at the convention center.
I did.
You texted me the story, and I remember I was in New York working. I mean, I was a mess because this was only like a few months or so after Scott died. And so I was in my hotel room resting, probably crying. And you sent me that story, and I was like, oh my gosh. And I felt so helpless because you and I have known each other for so long, but we've also now at that point had a shared thread of grief. And so we really understood each other. And so I felt so bad that I couldn't help you like physically, or I couldn't be there. I couldn't come drive and rescue you. So that's where, just so we have context for this story, that's where I was. So now continue.
Yeah. Well, I was just saying that I think like having a network of people who have experienced trauma and loss and grief has been like the most powerful thing for me and the most helpful thing. Being given a space to share your story and share your experience with people who are going to like genuinely listen and hear you, like stuff like this, right? Like if nobody listens to this podcast, which they will, but even if they didn't, like it doesn't matter. Like this is really wonderful and powerful that you're giving people a platform to share their experiences, because it's not something that you just like talk about a lot of the time. And so like I have other friends who have lost children in all kinds of different ways, right? And being able to hear about their stories is very helpful to me, because it's like, look at you, you're surviving, you're doing it. You're doing such a hard thing. And being able to come together and uplift one another is like so huge. And like I said before, like pain is pain and trauma is trauma and grief is grief. And it's like talking with Mel about her loss and her trauma has been very like helpful and healing to me. And honestly, it like the day I found out that Mel lost her husband, I was like, I don't know, I just like went into this mode where I was like, yes, this is what, like, I'm ready. I've been prepared for this, right? I can go help now. And,
Like Scott's dead. Yes.
I know. You know what I mean? I was like, okay, I am the person that has been perfectly primed to assist.
Yeah, you knew what to do. And you did. And I remember that because no one else knew what to do. And you were like, I'm here, do this thing. I'm going to stay for this amount of time. I'm out. Bye.
Yeah,
It was perfect.
I was like, because I remember the day Alice died, everybody just came over, right? And nobody knew what to do. We were literally all just sitting in the living room. And it was like, and I don't blame them. I wasn't like, you guys don't even know what to do. But I just was like, we were all just sitting there, just totally clueless and all devastated, right? Which I think is also very powerful to come share in that sadness. I think is really wonderful. But I was like, I know what to do. I remember I brought you sleep medicine and I brought you tissues and I brought you food. And I was like, you probably won't even eat this, but if you want to, here's some food.
And your tissues, you go, I brought you tissues that have aloe on them because it's cold and your nose is going to run a lot and it's going to hurt because mine did. Yeah,
my question though is, did you take her chili?
No, she knew I couldn't eat anything. Dang it. So I wanted to add on to that story because there's a second part. From my perspective, the story that we just talked about where you were at the convention and you were having a meltdown in the bathroom. So part 2 of this story is that I have a friend named Alicia that lived a few houses away from me when in the neighborhood that Scott and I lived in. And she was my good friend, and she had also had a good friend die unexpectedly like 6 months before. So she's one that has not experienced like the loss of a spouse, but understood like pain and loss, and was awesome and helped me out a lot and was a good friend. That friend Alicia and Sarah, was the conference like a 3-day event or something? Yeah, they had met at the beginning of the conference. And this episode that we're talking about with Sarah and the trigger that sent her into the bathroom, I don't know, she had only known Alicia for like 1 day. And so I'm sitting there in my hotel in New York and I'm like, I can't help Sarah. I feel so bad. I know she needs like a hug or like a distraction or some food or something. So I'm going to text Alicia and see if she can help out. So I texted Alicia and I'm like, here's the situation. I'm in New York and I can't help her and Sarah's not okay. And I know you just met her. And she was already in my like grief circle. That knew what to do. I knew she would be good to handle it. And I was so grateful that she was checking her phone and that she was willing to jump up and help somebody in need. She just was like, okay, I'll do it. And there were times when I was at home where all of a sudden she'd get a thought and she goes, it's like somebody kicked me in the butt out of my bed and I knew that you needed something. And so I drove to your house. And it was like every time that she had that feeling, I was like not okay and I really needed somebody. Like it was freaky. Like one time it was at like 1 a.m. And so those people that want to help, that really kind of listen for those little slivers of, oh, maybe Mel needs help or maybe Sarah needs help, and that are ready to act, like bless them. Because what happened at the event with Sarah is I think Alicia came and then found you, right, Sarah? And then did you guys go to lunch or something? And in the end, even though I was not able to help my friend Sarah, through Alicia, I was. And so then I felt like Sarah was in good and safe hands. And so this whole network of grief, and even if you haven't lost somebody, it's important to be part of the network, because at some point you're a person or somebody close to you will die. You cannot escape the planet without that. And so it's really great just to have good friends or people that are willing to jump in there and help you.
Well, and it's cool how like a grieving person is always so ready and willing to help a grieving person. Like they don't need to have any other connection. So like I had met Alicia, but you're literally like, Sarah is hurting. And she's like, oh, okay, here I go. She wasn't like, well, I don't know her.
Yeah.
Really? Like, that's kind of weird. She was like, what can I do? What do I need to do? Here I go. And I feel like that's been a common theme with all the grieving people that I've seen. And that's kind of how I felt the day that Scott died, where I was like, I need to help. I need to go and do it, because like people, that's like that pain is so familiar that it's like, you have to do something.
Yeah. Well, I really love that you've been helping a lot of people with your blog. And will you tell us the name of your blog so we can share it with everybody?
Just follow me on Instagram, Sarah Bertola.
Spell it.
SARAH_BERTOLA. Yeah, I have my Allison After blog. I share about grief and stuff sometimes.
Yeah.
I don't do it so much.
Yeah, I feel like in the early days it's so much, it's therapeutic to write about that stuff, and then time goes on and life happens. So,
well, and I still share, just like I just share more like on Instagram, where it's like smaller stuff, where it's not like this big blog post.
Yeah. So follow Sarah on Instagram, Sarah_Bertola, and or her blog, Allison After.
Sarah, thank you for sharing your story. It was a heavy one. I don't know if other people felt the same way that I did, but it was a different experience hearing your story rather than some of the usual stories we hear. So thank you, and thank you for being open and sharing on your blog. And we got a little glimpse of Rosie, and she's adorable. So, a little cutie pie. We hope that our listeners have found this episode to be helpful. Remember to go to iTunes and give us a rating and review. It really helps us to reach other people who need to hear some of these stories. So the more reviews we have, the more legitimacy it lends to our podcast. And also, if you're willing to share with family or friends or people that you know who you think might benefit from this, please do that also. We're just really trying to reach as many people as we can. Also, check out the Widow Wives Club for our widow and widowers on Facebook. And for those who are not widows and widowers, check out our regular Facebook page.
And please tell us your widow/non-widow wins when we post on Wednesday, because we want to hear positive stuff going on in your life. It's easy to maybe just focus on the death stuff all the time, but there's other stuff going on too, even though maybe we're sad sometimes. So post that. We want to see what you're up to.
Join us next time. I'm Mel. No, wait a minute.
Yes!
That was the best.
Oh my
gosh. Okay. Let's try that again. I'm Mel.
Oh my gosh. Anita's lost her mind.
I meant to do it that time. I'm Anita.
I'm Mel.
And I'm Sarah.
And we're just two widows and one sad, sad mom trying to figure out widow we do now.
That was so funny. This is my favorite thing to discuss with you.
Tell me, what is it?
One of my favorite things. I do enjoy tacos and cheese and dogs. This is about how you cannot pay hundreds and hundreds of dollars for a phone plan, especially when you're a widow, your person is dead, you might have kids, you might need another option, and you just want your phone to work, you want unlimited texting and service, and you want it to be like $25 a month.
It blows my mind that they have plans that start at $15 a month. That is so cheap. And the cool thing is it uses other 5G networks, and so you don't have to pay extra for that, and you still get great service.
Yep. Anita and I have traveled all over, and I have used my phone. So I highly recommend it. And my mom's even on it. When my dad died, we put his phone down to the cheapest plan, which is $15 a month. And I think my mom's on the $20 a month plan, and it's so worth it. It's so much cheaper than what we were all paying before. So I highly recommend it if you're on a budget or not. Who cares? Ryan Reynolds is in charge of the company, and they send you free stickers with Ryan Reynolds temporary tattoos. It's kind of the best. So if somebody wants to sign up, what can they do, Anita?
Go to trymintmobile.com/WWDN. Seriously, you guys. Such a great idea. Save yourself some money.
And if you're worried about losing data or having any changes with your phone, not going to happen. They walk you through it. Everything's fine. It's the easiest process of all time. Again, that's
trymintmobile.com/WWDN.